No female protagonist. Kexi cultivation. Eerie cost flow. In the update of Terror Cultivation Road, Wudao Immortal Road, Mysterious, Immortal Road, Fishing Man, are you really practicing immortality? Zhou Yi's face was filled with fear, murmuring to himself. Between heaven and earth, countless practitioners surged under the dark sun, and beneath their flesh and blood, something seemed to be stirring up. During the Daji Dynasty, the black sun hung in the sky, and there seemed to be inexplicable things permeating the world. Strange things run rampant on the earth, and the immortal kingdom guards the human world. However, the immortal way undergoes changes, and ultimately, is it immortal? What's so weird? Chapter 1. Divine Mysterious Bloodlight, Crisis Approaches. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Daji Dynasty, Guabei County. Damn it, what should we do now? We're going to pay the head tax soon, and I still have 51 left this month. Zhou Yi's face was very ugly, sitting in front of his house, staring blankly at the sparsely populated street. I have run to 4 or 5 old customers, but there is no job at all. If we don't pay the poll tax, we will definitely be arrested and exiled, and then we will die. His face was full of distress and a hint of deep fear. Not many exiled people have a good ending, and most of them work hard to death. Just when he was at a loss, a faint earthy smell rushed over his face. A pair of shoe tips appeared in front of him, and a cold, hellish sound sounded in his ears. Xiao Zhou, there's a job, are you interested? The sound made Zhou Yi feel goosebumps, and when he looked up, he saw a wooden and thin face. The antique shop owner, who is also his client, often asks him to help translate obscure historical sites. Manager Wang, why are you so creepy today? What's the smell on you? It's too unpleasant. Zhou Yi felt a bit uneasy all over, with a look of disgust on his face. Today's shopkeeper Wang seemed different. Today I tidied up the yard and smelled of earth. Zhou Yi felt strange when he heard that his intuition was not unfashionable. The conversation changed. What's today's activity? What's the price? Zhou Yi's eyes flickered as he looked at him with anticipation, almost turning into a financial obsession. Manager Wang's voice remained cold as ever. 5 taels of silver, it's a black job. Upon hearing these words, Zhou Yi's heart skipped a beat and his voice quickly lowered. Manager Wang, keep your voice down, Heihua. If someone hears you, it will cause a lot of trouble. The so-dot called black work refers to copying and translating books excavated from ancient tombs. This is a taboo act. Once caught by the government, it can be either exiled or executed. How are you? Are you interested? Manager Wang looked at him with gloomy eyes. At this moment, Zhou Yi's mind suddenly flashed through a scholar who had been beheaded at the entrance of the vegetable market before, and that was a person who had committed taboos. But then he thought of those who were extremely miserable and exiled, and his face changed from blue to red. Change in gaze, grit your teeth and nod, pick up. Okay, come with me. Shopkeeper Wang turned around and walked towards his own store. Zhou Yi quickly followed up. Manager Wang is as agile as a flying bird, unlike a 60-year-old man. Zhou Yi was weak and struggling to catch up. Wait for me, you're walking too fast, he said, but the shopkeeper Wang turned a deaf ear and still went his own way. After a long silence, Zhou Yi arrived at the Guidao Zhai, half walking and half running. He gasped for breath, and the wooden-faced Wang shopkeeper stood in front of the door, with his back facing the door. Manager Wang, are you really 60 years old? You run faster than me. Zhou Yi looked incredulous. Upon hearing Zhou Yi's words, the shopkeeper Wang suddenly turned around and looked at him, his eyes turning red and his face twisted slightly. He shouted in a low voice, "Shut up, you're making too much noise." After speaking, Manager Wang covered his face with both hands and his body trembled slightly, as if he was enduring something. Zhou Yi was startled by a loud shout from shopkeeper Wang, and as he watched the other person's strange behavior, a hint of horror inexplicably rose in his heart. "Manager Wang, are you feeling unwell?" Wang, the shopkeeper, put down his hands and his face became numb again. He walked into the antique studio with a cold voice. "Hurry up to the side hall, things are inside." Zhou Yi looked at the strange shopkeeper Wang, and his recent changes seemed unusual. But for the sake of money, he could only endure it, but his heart was chilling. Turning around a few steps, I walked into the side hall of the antique studio. Inside was a long table, with a dozen or so seemingly dilapidated ancient books on the left and pens and blank books on the right. What kind of smell, so unpleasant, just like the smell on Manager Wang's body. Zhou Yi's face was disgusted, with a rotten smell that he always felt as if he had smelled it there. "So familiar, where have you heard of it?" Turning to look at Manager Wang, he was sitting in the hall, rubbing his face vigorously in front of a mirror. Zhou Yi frowned, sighed, sat at his desk, and casually picked up an ancient book. This book has no name, the cover is already tattered, and the first page is a unique ancient seal script. This type of ancient seal script is very ancient and only a few people have learned it. The teacher who was hired by the Zhou Yi family when they were wealthy before taught him. Almost every page of this book has holes, which makes Zhou Yi frown. Make do with the translation, I don't know how many mistakes or omissions there are. Don't let anything happen, I felt a little uneasy in my heart. With countless thoughts, Zhou Yi shook his head and took out a blank book to start copying and translating. In the blink of an eye, half an hour passed, and the first book, which was only a dozen pages long, was translated word by him intermittently. The content is missing and cannot be read at all. Just as Zhou Yi finished writing the last word, he was suddenly surprised. Traveling through his mind, the gossip animal skin, which had remained motionless, suddenly emitted a mysterious radiance. This is a roll of white animal skin with black and white outlined gossip on it. On the gossip, lines of illusory text appeared, and it was he who copied and translated the content. The incomplete article surfaced and began to spin violently on the animal skin gossip. A wonderful scene appeared, and a picture appeared on the gossip. In a forest, a figure shrouded in blood light, filled with unknown demonic qualities, flickered into a sky filled with blood light, covering the forest ahead. After the blood light passed, the forest turned into a dead place. The terrifying scene startled Zhou Yi. The screen shrank again, with brand new blood-colored texts appearing on the animal skins of gossip. Before he could regain his senses, countless bloody words rushed towards him. Instinctively, Zhou Yi leaned back and fell to the ground. Bang! The loud noise alarmed the shopkeeper Wang outside, and an angry and cold voice sounded, "What's wrong with you?" Zhou Yi heard the roar and quickly stood up to look at Manager Wang. The other person stood up from their seat, with bloodshot eyes and a twisted face, almost like a madman. Unease arose in the heart of Zhou Yi, as today's Wang Changui was too strange. He said cautiously, "I'm sorry, shopkeeper, I fell." "Be careful, don't be surprised. Translate it quickly, otherwise I'll eat." Halfway through the conversation, the shopkeeper Wang angrily turned around, leaving only a silhouette behind. Watching the shopkeeper Wang leave, Zhou Yi's heart flashed with an inexplicable worry. Today's shopkeeper Wang is so irritable, and he looks very fierce. Eating, what does he want to eat? Zhou Yi's heart became increasingly uneasy. Taking a deep breath, he focused his attention on an unknown piece of information in his mind. Divine Mysterious Blood Light Technique Cultivation Material. Self-Blood Cultivation Method. Using fresh blood as ink, write the Blood God Light mantra around the elixir field. The spell penetrates into the elixir field and transforms into a blood spirit seal. Effect of use. Transforms into an invisible blood spirit, devours all essential energy to strengthen one's own body, transforms into an invisible body, and is fearless of swords and weapons. Cost. After each use, there will inevitably be a surge of yang energy, desire churning, and pain all over the body. It is necessary to abstain from sexual activity for an hour. Once the yang is released, the supernatural force will inevitably backfire and turn into a supernatural object. Is this a spell? Zhou Yi's heart was suddenly filled with surprise. There are spells in this world. Is this a world with cultivation power? Just as the Book of Changes was filled with joy, a cold voice rang out. What did you see in the book? Why is the text on it missing? A voice like Joyo made Zhou Yi fall into an ice cave. Manager Wang suddenly appeared behind him at some point, staring intently at the ancient books on the table. The text above suddenly disappeared, disappearing so strangely. Zhou Yi turned his head in terror, and Wang, the shopkeeper, had crimson eyes and a twisted face. A terrifying crack appeared on his cheek. As Zhou Yi's pupils contracted, the shopkeeper Wang suddenly extended his hand and grabbed his neck. Tell me quickly, what did you see? Zhou Yi was choked by an iron hoop-like hand, and suddenly had difficulty breathing and a huge pain. He struggled hard, and at that moment, a talisman for safety fell from his neck. This talisman landed directly on the back of Manager Wang's hand. In the next moment, the talisman paper suddenly burst into a golden radiance. Ah! With a mournful scream, the shopkeeper Wang's eyes were struck by lightning. He covered his eyes and suddenly retreated. At this moment, Zhou Yi had already come to his senses, and he saw the black smoke emanating from the head of the shopkeeper Wang. His scalp was tingling, and he didn't have time to think much. Instinctively, he turned around and ran towards the outside of the hall. The souls of the dead are all rising, and they dare not stay any longer. The shopkeeper Wang let out a mournful scream, "Kill you, I'm going to kill you." Ah! Pa! A lump of something suddenly fell from his face to the ground, and the shopkeeper Wang looked down at it. It was an old face, but it had already shown a slight decay. The smell of corpses in the air has become even stronger. The shopkeeper Wang's face was a blur of flesh and blood, as if it had been peeled off. With a ferocious face, he bent down and picked it up, covering his own face again. It won't be long, let's go solve the problem first. It's troublesome to find someone who knows ancient seal script. The shopkeeper murmured to himself, as the madness from earlier seemed to suddenly disappear. Put away the ancient books, turn around and walk towards the backyard. There are many beautiful flowers and green plants planted in the backyard. The flowers are blooming very bright red, and the green plants are also very lush, looking nutritious. Under the flowers and green plants, there seemed to be a sleeve and half of a bloody finger exposed from the soil. The shopkeeper left silently through the back door, like a ghost. Zhou Yi was running wildly on the street, and the scene just now had already frightened him. His face was full of horror, recalling the scene just now. How could shopkeeper Wang emit black smoke? He looked down at his chest, where was a blackened talisman. This is a relic left by Zhou Yi's mother for herself. Fortunately, this talisman paper saved me. Isn't Manager Wang human? Thinking of the spell in his hand, Zhou Yi felt that it was not impossible. Going home. Maybe he's already on his way to the door. If he finds me, I'll be dead. Zhou Yi was rapidly pondering in his mind, his face changing from blue to red. This strange spell seems easy to cultivate, as long as you pay attention to its cost, you should be able to master it. Chapter 2. Spell Blood Mark, Life and Death Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A slight impulse flashed in Zhou Yi's heart, and without any hesitation, he turned around and walked towards the dilapidated temple to the west of Guobei County. The temple is a local temple that has been abandoned for many years and is located in a corner of the county town. When Zhou Yi arrived here, the sky was already dim, and the afterglow of the setting sun was about to end. He quickly arrived at the dilapidated temple and took off his shirt, revealing his belly. Looking left and right, a broken bowl appeared in his eyes. He quickly walked over and cut his left palm with the sharp edge of the broken bowl. Blood flowed out, and he caught it with a broken bowl. Then, he soaked the grass on the ground with blood and began writing some strange words on his stomach. These texts are the Blood God Light Curse, each of which is exceptionally strange and eerie. There are not many characters, a total of 70.2, surrounding the position of Dantian, forming 4 circles. The first circle has 6 characters, the second circle has 12 characters, the third circle has 20.4 characters, and the fourth circle has 30 characters. These words make up a strange picture. As the writing was completed, these words began to emit a crimson radiance, a scorching heat flickering in the abdomen of Zhou Yi. The pattern on the Dantian began to rotate, and the red radiance was so prominent in the dilapidated temple in the evening. Soon, his belly turned into a vortex of red radiance. The scorching pain directly penetrated his body, and in an instant, Zhou Yi fell to the ground in pain, as if there were countless ants crawling all over his body, and the immense heat spread within him. His body was twitching wildly, but he dared not make any sound. He is clearly abnormal now, and if someone sees him, they may consider him a monster. Hula. Hula, I don't know why, but a dark wind suddenly blew around me. The wind was blowing heavily, and the entire dilapidated temple seemed to be half submerged by the strong wind. The wind is accompanied by abnormal whispers. Hee 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 hee. Ding ling ling. Hiss. Hiss. Countless sounds were like magical sounds flooding the brain, impacting the spirit of the Book of Changes. Zhou Yi's face became extremely twisted, with a scorching and eerie voice that made him go crazy. A deep voice echoed through the dilapidated temple, and he felt like a dying beast. Finally, the red light in the abdomen suddenly contracted violently and disappeared from the position of Dantian in an instant. The terrifying pain quietly disappeared in the next moment, and Zhou Yi felt relieved and relaxed in an instant. Hoo hoo hoo. Zhou Yi breathed heavily, feeling incredibly relaxed. He slowly sat up and touched his body, as if nothing had changed. But he could feel a red blood mark flickering in his stomach. Before he could do more research, a footstep suddenly sounded outside the dilapidated temple. So you're hiding here. It's really easy for me to find. The cold voice was like the water of 9 days of ice, pouring directly onto the forehead of Zhou Yi. He widened his eyes and looked at the broken temple gate, where a figure was slowly approaching from the darkness. A wooden face that was mostly aged and decayed, beneath the decaying part, there was a blood and flesh blurred face. Looking at the suddenly appearing antique shop owner, Zhou Yi's face became very ugly. Manager Wang, we have had no grievances in the past and no grudges recently. I don't want to take on your job, but I won't reveal it either. How about stopping here? At the critical moment, Zhou Yi did not feel anxious, but spoke slowly. His attention was entirely focused on his abdomen, and the mysterious bloodstains were being sensed by him. There is a realization in his heart that as long as he thinks, he can activate this seal. The shopkeeper Wang looked at him in a magical way, his gaze sweeping over the ground of the earth temple, where there were blood-stained straw and broken bowls. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It seems that you have already practiced. What kind of sorcery is it? Let me tell you. Zhou Yi's heart tightened as the other party had already noticed that he was practicing spells. Manager Wang, I don't know what you're talking about. The shopkeeper Wang's face became increasingly indifferent. Since you don't want to say it, I'll eat your brain and see what you've learned. In the next moment, the shopkeeper Wang's eyes flickered with a blood-red light, causing something terrifying to happen to Zhou Yi. Manager Wang's skin was like a piece of clothing, splitting from the head to both sides, and a blood-red figure emerged from it. That is a human body structure without skin, with blood-colored muscles, black meridians and blood vessels, a face full of muscles, and sharp white teeth that look so terrifying. A foul and bloody smell rushed towards us, and the opponent's speed was extremely fast. Before Zhou Yi could resist, he was already grabbed by the opponent's neck, and the tremendous impact directly threw him to the ground. Falling to the ground on his back caused a sharp pain, while his abdomen and chest were struck by lightning, and a blood-colored monster rode on him. The heavy pressure left him completely immobilized. The pain suddenly awakened Zhou Yi, and a bloody mouth had already appeared in front of him. The shopkeeper Wang's mouth was wide open to the extreme, as big as his head, and he bit into his face. At the critical moment, Zhou Yi suddenly turned his head and avoided the heavy bite. The sound of teeth closing sounded in his ear, and a sharp pain erupted in his left neck, with blood spurting out. Zhou Yi suddenly felt dizzy, knowing that the great artery around his neck had been torn. A cold and gloomy aura rushed towards his face, the stench of flesh and blood, and the abnormal coldness constantly stimulated Zhou Yi's fragile nerves. The crisis of death caused Zhou Yi, who had been oppressed for a whole year, to completely erupt. If you want me to die, you go die. Without any hesitation, the crisis of life and death has already triggered Dantian's bloodstains. In the next moment, a stream of blood light emerged from the Dantian and instantly penetrated the entire body. Zhou Yi transformed from a physical entity into a bloody figure, and his instinctive thirst for blood rose from his heart. Her eyes turned red, and the world seemed to turn red. Her body was like nothingness, and she pounced directly into the body of the shopkeeper Wang. As if drilling into a room filled with steam, countless scorching heat poured into his body from all directions, a continuous stream of vitality poured into his body, and Zhou Yi crazily devoured it, emitting a burst of laughter. So comfortable, ha ha ha, his crazy voice made him extremely excited. Ah! What is this? The shopkeeper Wang let out a sharp cry. A pair of eyelids filled with bloodshot and fear, he felt that life was passing by and getting faster and faster. The screams echoed like thunder in this earthen temple, even reaching outside. It is visible to the naked eye that Manager Wang's bloody body is crazily drying up. He struggled frantically, with excruciating pain spreading throughout his body. Come out. Come out for me. Chapter 3. Pain Cost, Coming from Tracking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He rolled wildly on the ground, and a bloody mist filled his body. Wherever the mist passed, everything was decaying. But it's of no use. His body is still rapidly drying up. Zhou Yi felt a sharp pain, and a mysterious force was corroding his body. Zhou Yi, who was already crazy, roared wildly inside the shopkeeper Wang's body. Kill, kill, kill you, die, die, die. Ah 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 ah. No. Desperate screams filled the air, and the shopkeeper Wang was convulsing all over the ground. With just 3 breaths, Manager Wang's body had turned into a curled-up corpse. A blood light suddenly flew out of the corpse, transforming into a naked figure looking around, and Zhou Yi appeared again. At this moment, his eyes were blank as he looked at the dried corpses on the ground and suddenly came to his senses. I actually killed him, I really killed him. This spell is too powerful, isn't it? Just as he was shocked, an immense heat spread within him, and a wild desire surged. Zhou Yi's face suddenly changed dramatically, and his desire surged into his brain. His whole body was filled with blood and energy, causing him to suffer excruciating pain. He sat down on the ground. It's so painful, ah ah ah, Zhou Yi rolled around wildly, thrusting his skin all over his body. His eyes turned red, and his skin was all red, as if he had come out of a steamer. The severe pain almost made him lose his breath. Is this the boiling of yang energy and intense pain all over? It's like 1,000 cuts and thousands of cuts. Zhou Yi endured the severe discomfort in his body and struggled to get up from the ground, picking up his scattered clothes and quickly putting them on. Looking at the broken bowls and blood-stained straw on the ground, he quickly picked them up and said, "These things cannot be left here." Breathing heavily, my skin turned red all over, and my gaze turned to the location of the door, where there was a flesh and blood skin and clothes. I don't know if this guy is actually the shopkeeper Yuan. If it weren't for that, Manager Wang would probably have died and been skinned by him. I don't know what this is. Suddenly, footsteps came from outside, and Zhou Yi's face changed. He quickly turned around and headed towards the back of the Tudi temple. The surroundings of the Tudi temple were all dilapidated, and he carefully crawled out of the dog hole, holding an old bowl and blood-stained thatch. The excruciating pain all over him kept him gritting his teeth and trembling all over. He vaguely heard the voice in the earth temple, corpse. Killed. Don't stay here for long. Zhou Yi felt nervous in his heart. He quickly left here, walked through the alleys in the city, and soon returned to his own home. After returning home, he lit the stove and threw the book he had written into it. The blood-stained thatch and broken bowl were thrown in and quickly picked up to cook. At the same time, he quickly checked his clothes and found some blood stains on his pants legs. He quickly took it off and stuffed it into the stove, quickly burning it to ashes. After changing his clothes again, Zhou Yi breathed a slight sigh of relief, but the intense pain all over his body still made him extremely irritable and painful. The corpses in the temple will be discovered. When I went to the antique studio today, someone must have seen them. The government is afraid to come knocking on them soon. We can't leave now either. This world is abnormal. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look up at the sky. There is a huge black sun hanging high in the sky even at night, which anyone can see. The black sun seems to have existed since ancient times, and there has always been a legend that night does not belong to humans. Humans cannot leave the city at night, otherwise they will undoubtedly die. This is the result verified by countless people with blood, and Zhou Yi naturally won't challenge it, even if he has mastered the spell now. Zhou Yi held a cup of cold water in his hand and kept drinking it. His whole body was hot and dry, and the excruciating pain was unbearable. The spell's backlash lasted for an hour. The only thing I can do now is to refuse to admit it, insisting that I left hastily because I knew the shopkeeper was going to copy ancient tomb books. The evidence I copied has been eliminated, at most it will be locked up for a few days. Various thoughts flashed through Zhou Yi's mind, and he endured the discomfort and struggled to lie in bed. At the same time, the earth temple where Guobei County had just stayed was already covered in blood on the ground. Amin fell to the ground in sorrow, his body torn into several pieces. A figure was pouncing on the dried corpse of the shopkeeper Wang, crazily tearing and swallowing. Crying while making a mournful sound. Ah, it hurts so much. It hurts so much, little brother. Little brother, why did you die? My heart hurts so much. No matter who you are, I will definitely find you and kill you. Brother, I can feel your pain, your body is telling me everything. Woo woo, it's delicious. Dong dong dong. A loud knocking sounded at the door. Zhou Yi was awakened from a shallow sleep and quickly said, "Who is it?" Wearing clothes with a sleepy expression on his face, he opened the door. At dawn, 4 fully armed constables appeared in front of their house. Zhou Yi's face showed a look of panic, and he quickly bowed and said, "For gentlemen, what's up?" 4 constables looked at him, and the first one, who was about 30 years old, said with a gloomy expression. "On the order of the Grand Master, I have ordered you to go to the county government to ask questions." Zhou Yi's face was bewildered and he said, "Excuse me, what's the matter?" The captain's voice was cold and harsh, "Let you come with me, didn't you ask questions, is your skin itching?" Upon hearing these words, Zhou Yi trembled and dared not speak again. 4 constables surrounded him in groups and led him towards the county government office. Zhou Yi pretended to be ignorant all the way, but his heart was pounding. I quickly arrived at the county government office, which looked a bit old and dilapidated. He was quickly taken to the lobby, kneeling on the ground without daring to say a word, just looking around in confusion. The leading constable said to the county magistrate in the lobby, "Sir, the scholar Zhou Yi is here." In the lobby, Zhou Yi saw a county magistrate who looked quite wealthy. Above the corner of the mouth, there are 2 small beards, and the face is very round. The sky is full, and the eyes are slightly small, with a very shrewd appearance. This person is Huang Yukuan, the county magistrate of Guobei County. He lowered his gaze to look at Zhou Yi and asked calmly, "Below is the scholar Zhou Yi." Zhou Yi quickly clenched his fists and said, "It's just a kid. Yesterday, a homicide occurred in the city. I'm looking for you to come and ask a few questions." "Excuse me, sir," Zhou Yi said with a bewildered expression on his face. "Yesterday someone saw you go to Guidao in the afternoon. What do you mean by going there?" Zhou Yi's heart moved and he quickly said, "Manager Wang has some tasks that he wants me to help him with. But after going, I felt like I couldn't do that task, so I left." Guo County Magistrate frowned slightly and said, "Is that all?" Zhou Yi quickly replied, "That's all. I stayed back and forth for less than half an hour before leaving." Guo County Magistrate's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. "Have you noticed anything strange about Manager Wang?" Upon hearing this, Zhou Yi's eyes were blank. "I didn't notice anything, it's just that Manager Wang looks a bit irritable than usual." Upon hearing these words, Guo County Magistrate thought to himself and then waved his hand at Zhou Yi, "You go down." Zhou Yi hurriedly said, "I'm leaving." Zhou Yi left the court with a hint of happiness on his face. It seems that they didn't suspect me. At this moment, he was full of wit, and a cold voice suddenly appeared in his ear. "I found you." Zhou Yi's hair stood erect, his scalp tingling. Chapter 4. Soundwave Search for Enemy, Dust Explosion. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Zhou Yi's gaze suddenly turned towards the surroundings, but he didn't see anything. On the street, there aren't many people because it's early morning. There are two constables in front of the county government office, who are looking around at Zhou Yi with strange expressions. Zhou Yi's gaze swept over everyone on the street, and everyone seemed suspicious. He, you can't see me. You killed my brother, you know, while I was eating my brother's body, I felt his deep despair and pain. Ha, I saw it. How did you kill him? From now on, let's play games. I will torture you to death. He, ha. Strange sounds kept ringing in his ears, but it seemed that only he could hear them. My heart was cold, and Zhou Yi's head was a bit confused. The sun had risen, but he felt no warmth all over his body. Zhou Yi took a deep breath, suppressed his inner fear, and forced himself to think calmly. Who is this voice? He said he ate his brother's body and saw the scene of me killing him. Is he the brother of Manager Wang? How did he find me? Zhou Yi's eyes were full of disbelief. Don't rush. He didn't kill me directly, there must be a reason. From his words, I'm afraid my spell has been exposed. But since he hasn't taken action, he's definitely not confident in killing me. He's threatening me. Do you want to scare me? Let's see if you're dead or I'm dead. A sinister smile appeared at the corner of Zhou Yi's mouth, and he turned around and walked towards his own home. At this moment, he noticed the changes in his body. His body was originally weak and lacking in vital energy, but now he is walking briskly. His facial features are very sharp, and his vision can even see ants 3 feet away, and his ears can hear sounds 4 or 5 feet away clearly. The changes in his body surprised him exceptionally. It should be the effect brought by the spell. I absorbed the vitality of Manager Wang and strengthened my body, Zhou Yi pondered. The world became noisy in his ears, and the streets gradually became lively. This is my advantage, I can capture hidden people with my powerful facial features. Thinking of this, he immediately had a plan in his mind. Zhou Yi turned into a small alley by the roadside and then ran away. His speed is very fast, and his ears are finally capturing the sound behind him. Every step he takes on the ground produces a considerable sound, which echoes through this alley. Normal people's ears cannot accurately distinguish these sounds. But in his ears, these sounds echoed and were captured by his ears, as if forming a picture that faintly outlined in his mind. Feeling this strange change, Zhou Yi's eyes showed shock. This is clearly the bat's ultrasonic ability, and this spell actually has this effect, strengthening my body to this extent. Zhou Yi was very familiar with the alleys in Guobei County. While running at lightning speed, sound waves kept propagating back and forth. Suddenly, he caught a blurry figure in his mind. The other person is about 5 feet behind him. Zhou Yi tilted his eyes slightly towards the back, his pupils tightened, and the figure he had captured in his mind did not exist. Invisibility. In an instant, he realized what was going on. It's a big trouble, but it's also an opportunity. He never imagined that I could use sound to capture his existence. As long as I design well, maybe I can impress him. Zhou Yi quickly rushed back to his own courtyard. I closed the door directly. He took out his kitchen knife and spatula and stood in his yard. He slowly closed his eyes and let the kitchen knife and spatula lightly collide. When the sound waves of metal propagate in all directions, and Zhou Yi's ears finally capture the sound waves. Soon, the image of the entire courtyard came to mind in his mind. However, the image is intermittent, and he can only perceive it when sound waves are ejected. He opened his eyes and quickly adapted to this strange sensation. He found that the more open the place was, the clearer his perception became. The more obstructed the place was, the rougher and blurrier his perception became. It's not really Bat's ultrasonic sensing ability, it's just somewhat similar. The Book of Changes kept tapping, nervously capturing the invisible mysterious person, with a slight sweat on his forehead. Outside the door of Zhou Yi's house, an invisible figure stood quietly. The hidden person has an ugly face. He has no lips, his face is covered in scars, and he can only see sharp teeth. The corners of his mouth occasionally leak foul-smelling liquid, and there is dried flesh between his teeth. His eyes flickered with madness. This person's spell is very dangerous, we need to figure out what his spell is. Torturing him little by little, I want to tear off your flesh and blood bit by bit, and taste it well. Ah, I really can't wait. Brother, have you seen it? I will avenge you. At this moment, the strange person turned his head to look at his left shoulder, where there was a face attached to it. It was the strange person who emerged from the skin of Manager Wang last night, and his face was actually pulled off and sewn onto this person's shoulder. The figure slowly turned around and disappeared into the darkness. Throughout the day, Zhou Yi maintained a high level of tension, but he did not notice the other party coming. He not only lacked joy, but also became even more nervous. At dusk, the sky gradually darkens. It seems like tonight is a sleepless night. Zhou Yi turned around and returned to the room, closed the door directly, and took a few steps to the kitchen. He carried a bag of flour and also a shovel. He pushed away his bed, picked up a shovel, and began digging a pit. After a few shovels, Zhou Yi was surprised to find that his body was quite strong. Even stronger than those farmers, but in half an hour, a pit that could accommodate one person had already been dug. He pushed the bed back and the excavated soil lay flat on the ground. Then, he took out some flour from the flour bag and sprinkled it evenly on the ground. He nailed the remaining flour bags onto the roof beam. A rope is tied to the mouth of the flour bag. As long as you pull hard, the flour will gush out of the bag under the action of gravity. Half a bag of flour weighs 20 pounds, and once it falls, it instantly fills the entire bedroom. As long as there are a few fireworks, there is a possibility of causing a dust explosion. This is the trump card he prepared, if his spell cannot kill the opponent. The pit under the bed is the last chance to escape, avoiding direct dust explosions. He lit the oil lamp, which he placed in a corner to avoid direct combat and extinguish it. At the same time, he carried a torch with him to prevent accidents. Having prepared everything, Zhou Yi sat quietly on the bench at home, staring at the flour powder on the ground. Picking up a kitchen knife and spatula in his hand, he lightly collided, and the sound waves echoed back and forth in the room, capturing all possible targets from both visual and auditory perspectives. The voices outside the street have completely quieted down, and the entire Guobei County has fallen into silence. An invisible figure reappeared in front of the Zhou Yi family. He was holding a pocket tightly in his hand. He opened his pocket. Inside were countless wriggling poisonous insects. The man opened his mouth, and black mucus sprayed out of his mouth, quickly dripping into the poisonous insect. After the poisonous insects came into contact with the liquid, they struggled frantically and even began to merge with each other, devouring each other and becoming strange in shape. I casually threw my pocket and it fell directly into the yard. A strange smile permeated the corners of his mouth, and a white bone flute resembling a withered bamboo appeared in his hand. The eerie and sharp sound of the flute quietly sounded, but it seemed to be under his control and only reached the Zhou Yi family. Verbose the pocket thrown in wriggled rapidly, and a large number of mutated poisonous insects crawled out of it. They seemed to be under control, frantically climbing in the yard, searching for all living beings. Quickly, a mutated poisonous insect crawled into the room through the cracks. When accompanied by the collision of metals, Zhou Yi's complexion changed dramatically. Poisonous insects appeared in every crevice and corner of the room, including spiders, centipedes, scorpions, etc. They were colorful, but the most terrifying thing was, these poisonous insects blend together in twos and threes, incredibly deformed and strange, exuding an extremely evil aura throughout their bodies. Zhou Yi shivered all over and said, "Here we go." Chapter 5. Tick, tick, bang, bang, bang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhou Yi looked at these poisonous insects that merged in 3 pairs, and his heart flickered with fear. These things look so scary. It is definitely cultivated through magic. He's just probing. Zhou Yi immediately saw the other party's purpose at a glance, and he picked up the shovel next to him. Take a picture of the poisonous insects that have already entered the room. Pup, the poisonous insect was smashed directly, and a foul odor rushed in. Zzz, the bottom of the shovel emitted thick smoke, as if it was being corroded by something. Zhou Yi's complexion changed greatly. Is it still corrosive? At this moment, more poisonous insects crawled out from the corners on all sides, and their speed was very fast, jumping towards the Book of Changes. The fastest one had already arrived at the door of Zhou Yi, and was about to pounce on his face. Without any hesitation, Zhou Yi directly activated the bloodstains in his dantian. A crimson radiance erupted from within him, instantly transforming him into a humanoid blood glow. At this moment, the poisonous insect pounced on him, and then a visibly withered and weak vitality flowed into his body. Zhou Yi's eyes flickered with a thirst for blood, but his mind was clear and instinctively fit in. His body, like a bloody stream of water, rushed towards all the poisonous insects in the room. In just one breath, these poisonous insects withered and fell to the ground, losing their lives. Zhou Yi returned to his original position once again, and the power of the spell quickly dissipated. Severe pain is spreading throughout the body. Qi and blood were boiling, and his skin quickly turned red. Ah! I couldn't help but let out a scream. Zhou Yi's skin was itching all over, and he needed to scratch and tug occasionally to relieve the itching. At this moment, the mysterious person guarding outside seemed to notice that all his poisonous insects had been wiped out, and a hint of madness appeared in his eyes. Kill my little baby, he, I will definitely eat you, I swear. Ha ha ha, dot. Scream, it seems that your spell also comes at a cost. The mysterious monster uttered insane words, but it seemed that his mind was also very clear. A contradictory feeling appeared on him at the same time, which seemed to be very harmonious. He kicked out suddenly, and in an instant, the gate of the Zhou Yi family was kicked open. He slowly, step by step, swayed in like a madman. At this moment, Zhou Yi was still immersed in his own pain, but the sound of footsteps outside had already startled him. He struggled to stand firm and grabbed the rope that fell from his head with his left hand. My body moved to the position of the bed, and my gaze was fixed on the direction of the door. Time passes by minute by second. Gurgle. The position of the window suddenly rang, and there was a figure faintly visible under the illumination of the oil lamp. But in the next moment, that figure disappeared again. Zhou Yi's forehead left a cold sweat. Dong dong dong. The door was fiercely slammed, and Zhou Yi's heart suddenly stopped, as if he was about to pull down the rope in his hand. But he restrained himself, and the door only rang a few times before becoming quiet again. Zhou Yi swallowed his saliva fiercely, enduring the excruciating pain, itching, and rolling blood and energy from his body, listening attentively to the outside world. Dida. Dida dida. 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 The sound of water droplets suddenly rang out. Zhou Yi's face suddenly showed a hint of vigilance. How could there be a sound of water? His gaze suddenly turned upwards, his pupils contracting violently, and a chilling sensation rose from the depths of his heart. A very ugly face appeared above my head at some point. A large hole appeared in the roof tiles, and the sound of water droplets flowed from it. The ugly monster's mouth was dripping with pitch-black mucus. "I've caught you," he said. In the next moment, the monster suddenly pounced from the gap in the roof. Zhou Yi was cold all over, as if suffocating, but in this crisis moment, he still made a response. His body suddenly rolled towards the ground, and the rope in his hand also pulled down with him. The flower nailed to the crossbeam instantly opened up, and a snow-white layer of flour fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, the flour fell to the ground, and a large amount of flour rose into the air, enveloping the entire room in extreme moments. Zhou Yi has already rolled under the bed. While paying the price, he didn't know if he could cast a second spell, fearing that there would be even more devastating consequences waiting for him. At this moment, the mysterious monster fell to the ground, and white flour filled the entire room. The burning lamp oil came into contact with the scattered flour. The flames exploded in an instant, and the entire interior of the house was engulfed in endless flames, with intense shockwaves sweeping in all directions. In an instant, a towering flame soared into the sky. Zhou Yi's ears were completely deaf, and a violent vibration came from the ground. A fiery heat flickered above the pit. Zhou Yi's head was a bit dizzy, and it took a few breaths before he regained consciousness. He suddenly looked up at the top of the pit, and the starry sky shone on the earth. His house had already been bombed out. At this moment, he didn't care about anything else. He suddenly crawled out of the pit, his gaze chilling as he looked around, searching for the figure of the mysterious monster. With a slight contraction of the pupils, a figure stood up from a pile of fire ruins. Ah! It hurt so much, so much. A mournful cry sounded at night, and flames were still burning on the strange person's body. His gaze suddenly caught sight of Zhou Yi. "I ate you. I ate you. Ah ah." He rushed frantically towards the Book of Changes. Zhou Yi flipped over and jumped out of the deep pit, running wildly towards the outside. At this moment, his body was still filled with intense pain, which was further stimulated by intense exercise. "I feel like my whole body is going to burn, and the strange person behind me is also crazily chasing him. The strange person's body is undergoing a strange transformation, and his lower body suddenly grows many sarcomas, which then quickly turn into centipede-like slender feet." The speed suddenly increased and swept towards the back of Zhou Yi. Zhou Yi felt the cold wind behind him and suddenly rolled away, avoiding the attack. As his pupils shrank, he saw a huge creature, at least 1 zhang long, with a lower body resembling a centipede and an upper body resembling a humanoid monster. At this moment, the other person's eyes were sparkling with crimson light, looking at him coldly. Zhou Yi was covered in cold sweat, with fear, pain at a cost, and a hint of despair in his heart. The monster of the centipede slowly twisted its body, and the monster's head rotated 365 degrees, emitting twisted laughter. Hee 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 hee. How fragrant you are. Your flesh and blood must be very sweet. Be a part of me. Chapter 6. Painful Counterkill, Revealing Secrets. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. A huge monster rushed towards Zhou Yi. At the critical moment of life and death, Zhou Yi no longer had any scruples, with a ferocious expression on his face. Suddenly, it turned into a burst of blood and rushed towards this terrifying monster. The two of them collided in an instant, and Zhou Yi rushed directly into each other's body. A patch of blood permeates the other person's body. The monster's sharp cry rang out, "Get out of here!" A black force emanated from his body, and the blood light was immediately suppressed. Zhou Yi exerted all his strength to stabilize himself, feeling the immense vitality flowing into his body. At the same time, he also felt the ubiquitous pain, as the black radiance was eroding him. The black and red radiance permeated the monster's body, causing it to roll wildly and roar violently. "Get out, get out, get out. Ah ah. It hurts so much. It hurts so much. It hurts so much. Ah ah ah." The mournful screams kept ringing out, and Zhou Yi was also roaring wildly, with excruciating pain emanating from his entire body, causing him immense pain. "Kill you, I'm going to kill you, go to hell. Ah." The blood light and black light corrode each other, and as time goes by, the blood light gradually becomes stronger and the black light gradually fades. The entire Guobei County was shaken by a loud sound. At night, apart from the meme, almost no one comes out. In the Yamen, County Magistrate Huang Yukuan came to the court with a solemn expression. Several constables on duty also arrived here. Huang Yukuan looked at them with a serious expression and said, "Go and see what's going on." Several constables looked at each other, but they dared not disobey the county magistrate's orders. They quickly walked out of the Yamen and headed towards the direction of the sound. At this moment, in the east corner of Guobei County, there is a Taoist temple here. A figure walked out of the Taoist temple, looking solemnly at the direction of the explosion. This is a handsome young man, about 20 years old, dressed in a blue Taoist robe. He frowned slightly and took out a talisman paper in his hand, sticking it to his chest. A faint dark blue glow converged around him, enveloping him. With a leap, he transformed into a phantom and headed towards the direction of the sound. The speed is amazing, it's just 1 foot away with just one sweep. At this point, the war between the monsters and the Book of Changes has reached its end. The blood light completely enveloped the monster, and the black power was completely consumed. The monster began to wither at an astonishing speed and let out a crazy roar. Ah! It hurts so much, so much. Mom! Mom! Brother! Brother! Woo-woo! The monster seemed to have completely lost its sanity, crying incoherently. The voice gradually lowered until it completely disappeared, and a strange, dry corpse fell to the ground. Blood rushed out from the corpse, and Zhou Yi rolled directly to the ground. At this moment, he was completely naked, with countless bright reds appearing on the surface of his body. The scorching heat and the rolling of qi and blood made his face look grim. The pain almost drove him crazy, it hurt so much. It hurt so much. He crazily grabbed and tugged at his body, the scorching heat making him want to vent and find a woman to vent. His eyes turned red, and all his blood vessels were popping out. At this moment, something cold lifted his spirits. He suddenly grabbed onto this cold thing, with a hint of clarity in his eyes. He stumbled and left this place crazily and bewilderedly. Hot, so hot. Water. I need water. With a hint of clarity in his instincts, he returned to his own home. He pounced at his own wellhead, couldn't bear it anymore, and jumped into the water. Put on the cold well water refreshed Zhou Yi's spirit. Although his body still suffered from severe pain, the coolness brought by the cold water gradually made him more conscious. Ha! Ha! He was panting fiercely, completely immersed in the water, and gradually, the pain in his body seemed tolerable. A thought flashed through his mind: we can't stay here anymore, we must leave. My house has been bombed, and the monster's body is also not far away. It will definitely implicate me. He looked towards his right hand, and something with a cold breath kept coming from him. When he saw this thing, he was surprised. It was a strange black brand, densely covered with seemingly engraved marks. What is this thing? Forget it, let's talk about it later. This thing seems to keep me a little clear-headed. Zhou Yi cleaned the token and stuffed it directly into his mouth. A cold wave pierced through his forehead, making his previously vague will clearer. Zhou Yi took a deep breath and climbed towards the wellhead with all his strength. His well is built of rock, with a small diameter and gaps between the rocks, making it easy to climb up. He still felt intense pain and heat all over his body, but the token in his mouth emitted a chill, keeping his brain awake. After digging out the well, Zhou Yi's gaze turned to the distance, where a string of flames was coming towards this place. Under the flames, several figures rushed towards this place. The people from the yamen. They came so fast. Looking at his naked appearance, Zhou Yi also had no choice but to turn around and run towards the distance with his bare buttocks. His goal is a corner of the county town, where there is a dog hole that can lead to outside the county town. It was only when he accidentally saw some children playing there that he found out. Now that it's a life-saving place, even at night, he has to run. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Yi arrived at the location of the dog hole. This place was covered up by a pile of thatch, and he lifted it up and went straight in. After a few breaths, he had already arrived outside the county town. Looking at the deep and dark outside world, Zhou Yi gritted his teeth and rushed into the darkness. The figure wearing a Taoist robe arrived at the scene of the battle amidst a stream of light and shadows. At this moment, several constables also arrived here. When they saw the Taoist, their faces immediately changed and they bowed respectfully, saying, "I've seen an immortal master." The young Taoist ignored them, but furrowed his brows as he looked at the strange corpse curled up in a ball. Xie Xiu, completely eerie, who killed him? This kind of death method has a powerful spell. A hint of greed flashed in the eyes of the young Taoist, and the corners of his mouth slightly curled up, revealing snow-white teeth. His gaze suddenly turned towards the surroundings, and the bombed room appeared in his eyes. He turned around and walked towards it, appearing in front of the ruins in the next moment. Observing left and right with cold eyes, he furrowed his brows slightly and said, "What a powerful explosion. It seems that there is a cultivator hidden here who is also very skilled in killing a completely eerie evil cultivator. Since you appeared at my station, how could you have run away?" His gloomy gaze noticed the water by the well, and he took a step over, slightly touching the water stains on the ground. Did he hide in the well when the explosion occurred? He was clearly a master. Why? A spiritual light suddenly flashed through his mind. I understand now. This is not a master, but a lucky person who has never practiced before. By chance, he developed a mysterious technique. This evil cultivator probably came for this sorcery, so I deserve this opportunity. Chapter 7. Strange sounds on the road, Dao Yuan pursues. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The young Taoist stood up, with a hint of ecstasy on his face and a pounding heart. A talisman paper appeared in my hand. I saw the talisman paper flicker slightly, and a wonderful radiance fell on the water stains on the ground. Then, the talisman paper flashed and flew towards the county town in one direction. The young Taoist named Dao Yuan is an immortal teacher stationed in Guobei County, specializing in managing all abnormal events. After about a quarter of an hour, Dao Yuan, like a stream of light, quietly arrived at a dog hole. The radiance of talisman paper floats quietly here. Looking at the dog hole leading out of the city, Dao Yuan's eyes showed a hint of solemnity. Going outside at this time is not a good thing. After a moment of contemplation, he took out a piece of talisman paper in his hand and gently pressed it against his body. A wonderful radiance covered his whole body, and in the next moment he disappeared. This is a hidden talisman, hiding his figure. I saw him raise his hand and wave, and the brilliance of the tracking talisman fell into his hands. Leap forward and step on the gap of the city wall, then jump over the wall in a few vertical and horizontal directions. After landing outside the city, raise your hand and release the radiance of the rune paper again. The radiance seemed to be sensing something slightly, pausing for a moment before flying in one direction. Dao Yuan quickly followed and disappeared into the darkness in his breath. Zhou Yi was running in pain in the darkness, his body burning with countless flames, and his qi and blood churned without stopping for a moment. He held a mysterious token in his mouth, with a faint chill that kept his brain clear. Because he had no clothes, the cold air outside also brought him a refreshing feeling. But the pain is also clearer, but it can barely maintain a balance. As he was running, he kept stomping on the tattered branches under his feet, and there was a constant tingling sensation from the soles of his feet. Now, he was completely naked. Noisy sounds echoed around him, constantly converging in his mind, transforming into blurry images of an area of 4 or 5 zhang. He is not running fast, walking slowly. He has already run to the side of the official road and is heading forward. He doesn't know where to go either, but he wants to stay as far away as possible from Guobei County. Hula. Hula. A cold and gloomy wind slowly blows up. Zhou Yi was blown by these cold winds, and his boiling qi and blood seemed to have decreased significantly. These winds are very cold, with a cold that penetrates into the bone marrow. Zhou Yi immediately realized something was wrong. He. Ringing bells. Strange and noisy sounds suddenly rang out. On the quiet side of the official road in this late night, it is incredibly permeable. Zhou Yi instinctively looked around, and tonight the moon was very round, with a silver light shining down, barely showing some visibility. But seeing nothing, he couldn't help but frown. What's going on? Is this the reason why we can't come out at night? Cold wind, strange sounds. Zhou Yi shook his head and looked towards the direction of Guobei County, which was shrouded in darkness and could not see anything. Anyway, let's run first. The end of this road is Tianqing City. Let's see the situation there. Zhou Yi continued to run, and along the official road, his running speed became much faster. The official road on the ground is very strange, made of pure white stones and very conspicuous at night. The stone is very round, each piece is only the size of a thumb, mixed with special sand and solidified into one. Running on this road may hurt my feet, but I can still bear it. Zhou Yi was very vigilant, constantly capturing the surrounding scenes through the sound waves generated by footsteps. He always felt as if something was watching him in the darkness. Gradually, he felt an inexplicable sense of fear rising in his heart. What's going on? How could I be afraid? Zhou Yi's heart gradually quickened, and he had no idea why. ZZ. Bibibi, a sound like an electromagnetic wave suddenly sounded in his ear, so close to him. Zhou Yi was suddenly startled and turned his head to look to the left, but there was nothing. A cold sensation suddenly appeared on his right shoulder, and Zhou Yi instinctively swung his backhand towards the back. There was still nothing, a chilling feeling that made him cool from head to toe. Zhou Yi turned around and ran away. He had already made up his mind, as long as you dare to show your face, I am not a vegetarian in my magic. He muttered with resentment in his heart, his eyes slightly reddened, and he felt a sense of irritability, as if he was about to explode. As he was running, his heart suddenly jumped and an inexplicable illusion appeared in his mind. That is a phantom formed by sound waves, a blurry and strange outline. A black thing that seemed to have a humanoid shape, just 1 foot behind him. At this moment, Zhou Yi's scalp was about to explode, and he suddenly turned around to look behind him. The sound of footsteps rubbing against the ground once again stirred up a dense wave of sound waves. These sound waves converged in his mind, and a black shadow was only half a zhang away from him. But what was terrifying was that he still didn't see anything in front of him. Zhou Yi's heart had already cooled, he knew that he seemed to be targeted by something. At this moment, a brilliant light suddenly lit up from the front. This radiance was like a needle and thread, piercing directly into the space in front of him in an instant. A black figure emitted a violent wave in the radiance, and then shattered with a loud bang. When a thumb-sized ball fell to the ground. The fine needle, shimmering with blue light, hovered in mid-air and then aimed at him. Zhou Yi's whole body was icy cold, and a killing intent rushed towards him. He had a premonition that with just a slight movement, he would face a thunderous blow. A figure slowly emerged from the darkness, striking the pursuit of Dao Yuan. The blue fine needle seemed to be under his control, and a flicker flew into his sleeve. Dao Yuan's face showed a hint of smile. "Your Excellency is quite interesting. It's even late at night, and you're walking a bird naked on this official road. Don't you know that without hidden symbols at night, it's easy to provoke monsters?" Zhou Yi looked at this person, although he was smiling, his whole body was filled with terrifying killing intent. He's like being stared at by a fierce beast. At this moment, the pain on Zhou Yi's body had already subsided by half. He slowly spat out the token from his mouth, looking at the person in front of him with an ugly expression. "Who is your Excellency? What do you want to do?" Dao Yuan's gaze suddenly turned cold. "Did you kill that evil cultivator in Guobei County?" Upon hearing these words, Zhou Yi's heart skipped a beat and he said, "Did you catch up so quickly?" Zhou Yi said with a gloomy expression, "He came to kill me. If I don't fight back, I'll die." "What? Do you want to stand up for evil cultivation?" Zhou Yi said, but his heart kept thinking about the way to escape. Chapter 8. Intense Mystery, Assault and Life Fighting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Coming out. "Hee, they deserve it too," said Dao Yuan with a hint of disdain on his face. A cold voice sounded, "What interests me is you. You have no spiritual power fluctuations on you. Well, it's probably a coincidence that you got a mysterious technique. This sorcery is likely related to that evil cultivator, who will come to pursue you and find your home. Make a deal, hand over your tricks, and I can let you go." A faint smile appeared at the corner of Dao Yuan's mouth. Upon hearing these words, Zhou Yi's heart sank. The other party saw that the spell he was practicing seemed very special, and even specifically demanded it. Obviously, they had no intention of letting him leave. "But why didn't he just take me down?" He's not sure. In an instant, Zhou Yi grasped the key and said with a movement in his heart, "Are you serious?" There was a hint of anticipation on his face, and Dao Yuan nodded inexplicably. "Of course it's true. We have no grievances or grudges, killing you has no benefit. I just saved you, didn't I?" Zhou Yi's face changed slightly, and then he picked up the token in his hand. "The spell is on this token, I hope you keep your promise." As soon as the words fell, he threw the token towards the opponent. Dao Yuan looked at the thrown token and instinctively raised his hand to pick it up, but hesitated in an instant. There was a hint of disgust in his eyes, but he saw that the token was taken out of the other person's mouth. But thinking of the mysterious sorcery, the hand that had previously paused began to move again. But just as his attention was drawn, Zhou Yi had boldly activated the seal in the dantian. In less than an hour, using the spell 3 times in a row, he didn't know what the outcome would be, but he had no choice. In the next moment, he had already turned into a bloody light and rushed forward. A dazzling blood light swept through, and Dao Yuan immediately showed a grim smile on his face. "I knew you were going to do this," he said suddenly. A layer of black light appeared on his body. These rays of light extended out into sharp black thorns, making him look like a hedgehog, shining endlessly. The blood light collided directly with the black radiance, and Zhou Yi immediately felt immense pain. But he crazily urged the Dharma seal, and the blood light completely enveloped the Dao Yuan. Zzz terrifying sounds kept ringing, and Dao Yuan's face was shaken. He was horrified to find that his sorcery was decaying at an astonishing speed. Not good. The mysterious shell technique is not a match. His face changed greatly, and he immediately put prints on his hands. A faint mysterious wave filled his hands, and a crimson flame spewed out in an instant. The flames burned fiercely, instantly spewing out a black glow that fell onto the blood. The scorching heat made Zhou Yi's mind tingle, but this pain did not seem strong. Is the power so small? A hint of doubt flashed in his heart. But at this moment, he didn't have time to think of anything else, did his best, and crazily corroded the black light curtain. However, Dao Yuan was drenched in cold sweat, watching his spells ineffective, and could only push the black light on his body with all his might. I was careless. His tricks are so powerful. A hint of anxiety flashed in his heart. Time passed by minute by second, and both the black light and blood light dimmed. Zhou Yi could clearly feel that his physical, mental, and even life seemed to be weakening. Even the invisible pain is becoming more and more intense, and the black rays of light stretching and piercing black spikes are becoming stronger and stronger. But now he can't give up, die for me, die for me, die for me. Dao Yuan's face turned white, and at this moment, he was sweating profusely all over, and his spiritual power was almost depleted. Damn it, it's careless. The power of this sorcery is too strong. Even though he is just an ordinary person, how could he persist for so long? Show such great power. Damn it, damn it. The longer it took, the more panicked he became. The black light curtain had weakened to the extreme, leaving only a thin layer. Click. The sound of the broken light curtain reached Dao Yuan's ears, and his face immediately showed despair. A faint glow of blood spread through his body. Ah! No! Dao Yuan fell to the ground in excruciating pain, feeling all 5 internal organs burning and all the cells in his body in excruciating pain. Something is devouring its own flesh and blood. His body struggled frantically, then suddenly stiffened, completely motionless. A blood beam rolled out of him, and the intense pain hit his whole body, causing Zhou Yi to tremble violently. He couldn't even stand up, his whole body seemed to be cramping. The intense rolling of qi and blood almost made him lose his consciousness. He touched his token, and the cold breath instantly lifted his spirits. Without any hesitation, he grabbed the token and stuffed it into his mouth. The cold quickly permeated his brain, and the boiling qi and blood seemed to not make him lose his sanity. Zhou Yi trembled violently and slowly got up. A cold wind blew from somewhere, causing him, who should have had his blood boiling, to suddenly shiver. Zhou Yi's heart immediately awakened. Just now this guy said, it seems that the night cannot stay long, there is no hidden talisman, this guy dares to come out with this thing on his body. His gaze quickly fell on Dao Yuan, who had turned into a corpse. He quickly walked over and stripped off his clothes. He found a piece of rune paper pasted on the other person's clothes, with a strange rune on it. Shaking the clothes, a cloth bag fell out. Zhou Yi put a Taoist robe on his body, enduring the pain and flipping through the cloth bag. There were many things in the cloth bag, and after searching, he saw something similar to talisman paper. There are about 3 different types of 6 talismans, and one of them is exactly what the other person pasted on their body just now. That should be it. He quickly picked up the talisman and pasted it on himself. Amazing things happened. As the talisman paper came into contact with him, a mysterious wave spread from the talisman paper and quickly covered his body. He was surprised to find himself shrouded in a hazy gray radiance, and it seemed that his whole body had become somewhat transparent. Is this the effect of a hidden talisman? He quickly put the cloth bag into his arms, and his gaze caught sight of a ball that had fallen to the ground. It was something that fell from the black shadow killed by this guy. Although I don't know what it is, Zhou Yi instinctively felt that this thing should be worth some money. I picked it up directly and put it in a cloth bag, then turned around and walked towards the direction of the official road. It seems that I can't stay long. I remember the official road seems to pass by a mountain temple. According to the information in this world, one cannot stay overnight in the wilderness. At the very least, one must find a station where one can rest. I wonder if the mountain god temple is suitable. Thinking of this, he quickly ran wildly, his body's excruciating pain very intense, and he felt cramps all over. But he didn't dare to stop a step, he didn't know how long the rune paper in his hand could hold on. The situation is getting bigger and bigger, first the evil cultivator, then this Taoist, obviously from some kind of cultivator sect. Don't be such a moth anymore. I'm really approaching the limit of my mother. Tianqing City. Dao Palace Soul Hall, a token suddenly shattered. The cultivator on duty changed his expression and said, "Not good, someone has died." Chapter 9. 100 Calamities of Refining Mysteries, 2 Points of Spiritual Power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tianqing City, soon a figure will leave. On the official road in the late night, like a flowing shadow, constantly flickering, heading towards Guobei County. Zhou Yi was filled with excruciating pain, stumbling and enduring the almost bone-shattering pain and endless desire, finally seeing his goal. A dilapidated mountain temple located about 2 to 3 zhang away from the official road. Zhou Yi rushed over quickly, pushed open the door, and quickly closed it upon entering. Leaning against the door, he sat down in pain, curled up on the ground and convulsing all over. The sorcery has been used 3 times in a row, and the pain has increased by at least twice. He was sweating profusely all over, and if it weren't for the token in his mouth, he would have fainted from the pain. Time slowly passed, and in the agony, Zhou Yi was almost completely confused. Suddenly, endless pain flowed away like a tide, and Zhou Yi suddenly opened his eyes, panting heavily. He was covered in cold sweat all over, but he felt a force filling his body. After taking a breath, he slowly stood up and explored the mountain temple, gathering a pile of dry grass together. Take out the fire folder and light them, and the mountain god temple suddenly becomes bright. Looking left and right, he quickly saw the firewood piled up in the corner. He quickly walked over and brought out the firewood to increase the flames. The flames burned faintly, and Zhou Yi sat on the ground, surveying the mountain temple. The statue has long been in ruins, leaving nothing behind. Only the firewood left by past travelers. He shook his head slightly and took out the pocket he had obtained from the Taoist. Shake them all out and start watching carefully. A book without a name, a book called Divine Fire Law, a book called Dao Gong Commandments, a blue thin needle, a book called 5 Talismans Law, a transparent black ball, and several blueprints. Looking at these things, Zhou Yi's heart was filled with joy. This is his mother treasure box. With light in his eyes, Zhou Yi took out the token he had been biting from his mouth. After wiping it clean, he carefully examined the magical token under the firelight. After observing for a moment, he was surprised to find that the pattern on the token was a type of ancient seal script. This ancient seal script is very small, and it requires careful identification to recognize it. He realized that this was another unusual thing. Without any hesitation, Zhou Yi squatted up directly, picked up a nearby branch, and began to translate stroke by stroke on the ground. Quickly, a chapter of about 365 words was outlined and translated into the current language by him. The Art of Refining Mysteries. Zhou Yi looked at the 3 big characters at the beginning of this article. At this moment, the mysterious animal skin gossip in his mind changed once again. The refining technique appeared on the animal skin gossip, shimmering with a black radiance. The text began to rotate, turning into a vortex, rapidly contracting, and then transforming into a wonderful scene. A Taoist was standing in a dark forest when an unusually illusory figure appeared in front of him, rushing towards him. The Taoist clapped his palm and a wonderful force emanated from his hand, instantly hitting the opponent. The black shadow shattered on the spot, and a black ball fell into his hand. His hands were filled with a wonderful vortex of black light, and something seemed to be sucked into his body from the black ball. Immediately afterwards, a faint glow emanated from him. The screen suddenly shrank at this point, followed by a brand new piece of text. The text flashed towards the soul of the Book of Changes. With the previous experience, Zhou Yi did not respond at all. Quietly accepted the information in my mind. 100 Calamities Refining Technique Cultivation Method. Chant the scripture of the Dharma Code, and let the Qi go at will to refine the essence of the strange things and turn it into the original spiritual power. Cultivation Effect. Ultimate 12 layers of Qi refining great perfection cost. This world absorbs the essence of crafty things to cultivate, and will definitely be infected with the crafty quality. This method can eliminate the crafty quality, but every time you break a state, the crafty quality will turn into a disaster and block the way. If you can get through, you can break the disaster and remove the crafty quality of the previous mirror. This is a cultivation technique, but it doesn't seem to be that simple, said Zhou Yi, whose face was constantly changing, strange substance. This world seems to rely on absorbing this kind of strange substance for cultivation. If this substance accumulates in the body, there may be major problems in the future. Unconsciously, he thought of those two evil cultivators, who looked so terrifying. Zhou Yi immediately felt that there was a huge problem with the cultivation methods in this world. Does my piece of animal skin seem to optimize my martial arts skills? A strange expression appeared on his face, and then his gaze turned to the black ball. This is the Guizhu. It really brings together all the cultivation conditions. With a smile on his face and no hesitation, he picked up the mysterious pearl. Sitting cross-legged, with 5 hearts facing the sky. Silently reciting the scriptures in my heart. Heaven has 5 declines, leading to a cycle of destruction and emptiness. Accompanied by the continuous recitation of mysterious scriptures, he seemed to have entered an inexplicable realm. The eerie pearl in his hand exuded a faint black aura, blending into his palm and flowing into his body. Running along an unknown route, soon a phantom radiance converged in his dantian. That is a pure blue light, like liquid and smoke, a very wonderful thing. This is the original spiritual power. The mysterious pearl in my hand kept fading until it completely turned into powder. Deeply exhaling a breath of turbid air, Zhou Yi only felt a sense of relief throughout his body. A wonderful force was flowing in his body, making his whole body as if he had received acupuncture and moxibustion and massage. The originally surging power of the body flowed into the dantian with the flow of this power, transforming into a more gentle and mysterious spiritual power. At this moment, he felt as if he had become a vacuum. Slowly opening his eyes, Zhou Yi felt different and everything in front of him seemed to become lively. His gaze fell on the objects on the ground, and he flipped through several books. The Divine Fire Technique and the 5 Talismans Classic are all spells, and he didn't read them much. I focused my attention on the Daogong Commandments and another book. He first looked at the precepts, and his face gradually became solemn. Daogong Commandments, the first rule. Do not stare directly at the dark sun for a long time. The second precept. Cultivate evil and kill. The third commandment. There is no hidden talisman in the dark night, and it cannot be left for a long time. There are many precepts, and the content is very detailed, covering many aspects. The first 10 commandments are the most unique, and Zhou Yi saw some dangerous things from them. Don't look directly at the dark sun, obviously because it will become crazy and crazy. Don't stay in the dark for long, it's because of monsters. Xie Xiu, it should be the 2 strange people I met, they don't look like normal humans at all. The water in this world is very deep. Zhou Yi pondered. Flapping sound kaka. Suddenly, a hurricane seemed to be blowing outside, and the mountain temple made a clicking sound. A chilling sensation rose from the heart of Zhou Yi. Chapter 10. Doom Looms, Daji Dynasty. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At this moment, he lowered his head to look at the talisman paper on the ground, took out the hidden talisman again, and directly pasted it on his chest. A wonderful force quickly covered his whole body, and his figure immediately became illusory. He reached out and grabbed the thin needle on the ground, which was the magical tool used by the mysterious Taoist. He held the magical tool in his hand and mobilized the spiritual power within his body. He was surprised to find that his spiritual power was divided into two parts, one of which was absorbed by the magic beads. The other part of spiritual power is transformed by the power that originally surged within him. At this moment, the spiritual power transformed by the surging force in his body was easily mobilized and silently injected into the magical tool. This magical tool quickly draws spiritual power, and a force slowly accumulates in it, giving Zhou Yi a feeling of being in the dark. This fine needle can be controlled by him and unleash wonderful power. Wow! The shaking sound of the windows grew louder, and the gloomy wind outside the door blew away with a rustling sound. The bonfire in the temple also dimmed. Suddenly, the campfire changed from orange to a dark green. An inexplicable cold covering the temple. An incredibly cold thing flowed through his body, and this coldness appeared so suddenly. Zhou Yi immediately realized and thought of the 100 Calamities refining technique. Every time he broke through the realm, there was a fate accompanying him, the reason being to resolve the supernatural. This cold thing is so special, full of infinite malice. This cold thing flew out of his skin and instantly disappeared into the dark green flames. In the flames, it seemed as if a flame demon had risen, twisted and emitting infinite evil, with a somewhat humanoid appearance. At the moment when this strange thing appeared, Zhou Yi did not hesitate, and the magical tool in his hand had suddenly been released. The magical tool seemed to follow his heart, flashing towards the eerie green flames. But the eerie flame instantly dissipated, avoiding the blue flying needle directly. Half empty into a dark green flame, a flash rushed towards Zhou Yi. Zhou Yi suddenly rolled around on old dagger, glutinous rice rolls with sweet bean flour, avoiding the fire. Zzz. The flames fell on the ground, and a strange sound of corrosion echoed from the ground. There are still wisps of black smoke floating. The ground is bumpy and looks disgusting. At this moment, the radiance of the flying needle suddenly flashed, and under the control of Zhou Yi, it once again rushed towards the flames. But with a flash of flame, it avoided and rushed towards Zhou Yi. Once again, Zhou Yi tried to avoid the dagger, glutinous rice rolls with sweet bean flour, but the fire seemed to have life. This time, in the middle of the air, he turned and continued to attack him. But at the same time, the blue flying needle suddenly arrived and instantly hit the flame like demon from behind. Bang! A crisp sound sounded, and the blue flying needle bloomed with astonishing brilliance. This radiance is a circle of tiny light, shooting in all directions, tearing apart this eerie dark green existence from within. The flickering light disappeared, and the temple became completely dark. Zhou Yi was panting heavily, and the sound of the wind outside suddenly quieted down. A fine needle fell into his hand, and this magical tool seemed to be usable by anyone. What a treasure! Zhou Yi exhaled a deep breath, went to the campfire, reignited it, and then fell down, panting slightly. Sitting cross-legged, operating the spiritual power within the body. Just now, one strike consumed half of his second spiritual power in his body. Slightly moving, it seems that something is being drawn from the body. Spiritual power slowly recovers. How can spiritual power be divided into two strands? It's a bit strange. He breathed a slight sigh of relief, lowered his gaze, and turned to the other two books in front of him. After some thought, he turned to the unnamed book. As the reader carefully flipped through, surprise gradually appeared in their eyes. This is a cultivation diary, recorded by this person named Dao Yuan, all of which are important events in his life. It is not written with a brush, the text on it is very small, just like the text in modern books. A book can record a lot of information. The main content of this book is the life story of Dao Yuan, as well as the experience of cultivation. With the continuous reading of information, Zhou Yi finally gained an understanding of this world. The place where he is located is called the Daji Dynasty. It is mainly composed of two major forces, the various immortal sects represented by the Daoist palace, and the immortal cultivation aristocratic families represented by the imperial court. The world is ruled by two schools of cultivators, but there is a mutual connection between you and me. This person's name is Dao Yuan, from the Tianqing City Dao Palace. He is a cultivator on the second level of qi refining, responsible for guarding Guobei County and constantly cleaning up any possible monsters. The reason why this person records such a detailed life story is due to his deceit. To cultivate immortality, it is necessary to kill supernatural creatures and collect supernatural beads from their bodies as resources for cultivation. There is a substance called eerie substance in the eerie pearl, and the deeper the cultivation level, the more it accumulates in the body. This kind of thing will gradually affect the rationality, memory, and even the body of practitioners. At a certain level, if unable to suppress it, it will turn into a monster and completely lose control. The purpose of writing one's own life memory is to constantly observe whether there is any deviation in one's memory, detect abnormal behavior in advance, and seek treatment methods. In the Dao Palace, a pill is issued every month, which can to some extent suppress the outbreak of eerie qualities. According to Dao Yuan's investigation, it is said that the high-ranking officials of the Dao Gong and Daji Emperor have mastered the methods to eliminate most of the eerie elements. All cities and counties in the world are inhabited by monks. A cultivator must protect the safety of one side in order for humanity to continue. Monsters are most likely to appear in places where humans gather, constantly disturbing the peace of humanity. Without the protection of cultivators, humans would have died long ago. The interdependence between humans and cultivators in this world is very serious. Humans rely on cultivators to protect them, while cultivators obtain artifacts through places where humans gather. It's equivalent to seizing resources. There is spiritual power in the air, but these spiritual powers cannot be directly absorbed, otherwise they will be directly alienated. The spiritual power of a cultivator can only be obtained through magic beads. Spiritual power is divided into two types. One is the original spiritual power, which is also the foundation of cultivation. One type is external spiritual power, which is the original spiritual power that is refined step by absorbing human qi, blood, and spirit, and stored for consumption when casting spells. So the consumed external spiritual power can be restored by meditating and cultivating, extracting essence and energy from the body. Friars eat a lot and usually need special pills and tonic diet to supplement. Danyao is made from medicinal materials and contains a large amount of energy. Gradually, a peculiar cultivation scene appeared in his eyes. Gradually outlining a magnificent, mysterious, and terrifying world. Throughout the night, Zhou Yi was immersed in this cultivation diary. Closing the records in his hand, Zhou Yi's mind was filled with a large amount of information. The danger is not over yet. Dao Yuan is dead, and the Dao Palace will definitely send someone to investigate. What should I do?